Now this is part 4 of our focus signals on gold about predicting the future, and last time we looked at it was in part 3, and this is a weekly chart, and it looked like this to me at the time. And in there I said that I was changing my mind from being bearish, and I was looking for buying opportunities right at the end, but I thought it was going to go a bit lower, and so it hasn't gone any lower than actually where I showed you it last time, so I'm not going to show you the focus signals from the future because they're still active, so they're for clients only. However, what we're going to start off is just show you that that master time factors can be very close, and just by getting it slightly wrong can make a massive difference into the future. Now I picked, if you look at some of the previous videos, probably the end of part 2, you'll see some angles on there, and in fact if you look very closely you'll actually see that one was this number, a 2x5, and you can see that it gives this low here, and then I had a 2x7, which was this one here, and before that a 2x3, which is up there. So what you should be able to see is there's some kind of pattern. It's got 2 at the beginning, okay, and then it's got 3 in the second one, and then 2 at the beginning, and 5 in the second one, and 2 at the beginning, and then 7 in the second one. And so therefore there's a pattern. 2's in the first column, and then each odd number, 3, 5, 7, and so maybe the next one to watch might be a 9. And so that was an angle that I was watching for in the future. However, because this low here turned out to be the low, I realised that I was actually wrong, and that I got the master time factor wrong. Now I'm just going to make those weak lines so we can hardly see them, and you'll see what makes all this so incredibly difficult. And I'll just cut the lines as I've done in all the videos so that you don't fit things in to see what you want to see into the future. And so that was kind of the angles that I had coming up from the major low that was made in 2008. Now over the years I've been flipping between two master time factors, and you'll see in a minute why. So I'm going to change it to the other master time factor that I've been telling clients about. I just happened to pick this one, and I can't remember the reason now, but there was a reason. Now Gann's major angles are basically 1x1, 2x1, 4x1, 8x1, 16x1. I've got some videos on the YouTube channel telling you what basically an angle is, so watch that. Now I've changed the master time factor now. Now if I keep it to the old master time factor and I do a 1x1, then that is a 1x1 angle. It goes at 1 unit of price, in this case a dollar, by 1 master time factor. I'll just take that off. Well, actually I'll keep it on for the time being. Now the next one is actually a 1x2. Now the 1x2 doesn't actually work at all, and it just fell straight through on a daily chart. And the next one would be a 1x4, which would be another number that we're watching in the future. Now this 2x3 is just halfway between a 1x1 and a 1x2. 1 plus 1 plus 1x2 equals 2x3. The 2x5 is just a 1x2 plus a 1x4. Sorry, a 1x3, sorry, which would be that one there. So 1x3. So you can see the decision levels, they don't always work, okay, but because I'd seen that pattern, 3x2 worked, 2x5 worked, 3x7, then we're always trying to work out what the ones are going to be into the future. But as I said, I don't think I've got the correct master time factor, or I have done in the past, but I'd gone back to that one. Now if we do the same thing now, I've changed the master time factor, then what you'll see is a 1x1 is in a completely different position. So when I did the master time factor before, the 1x1 was here, now it's a flat line down here. So Gann said that the next numbers are 1x1, 2x1, 4x1, 8x1. In fact, Gann was talking about something he had no concept about because he died in the 1950s, which was binary mathematics. This is just binary. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc. So let's get rid of that. So everyone goes and tells you that a 1x1 is a 45-degree line. It's a complete and utter load of rubbish. It's got nothing to do with degrees. Degrees would mean that you'd have to scale your chart in a certain way, and the chart would be about 15 times higher than you can see here. But basically that's a 1 by 1. So the way I start off doing all this is to find one that looks roughly like 45 degrees, but it's got nothing to do with 45 degrees, just because we can change the scale. I could quite easily halve the scale and the thing gets flatter. So obviously a 45 degree line is just going to be in a completely different place than it would be if it was there. So again, it's just people spouting what Gans says, believing they know what they're talking about, but they actually don't really understand what's going on. But that's a 1 by 1. So the way I start off with, because we can't obviously use that, is 2 flat. So I then put in 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, then 32. So let's try 16. So this is one that goes up 16 points per master time factor. Now that looks more like 45 degrees. So that's probably roughly where I'd start. The numbers around 16. So obviously twice 16 is 32. Now the 32 is pretty much the same as a 1 by 1 with the other master time factor, which I've made light lines just so you remember. Okay, now actually this is, I think, the correct master time factor. So the 32 by 1 is the same as the 1 by 1. They're very, very similar. So that's how easy it is to get these things wrong. Now the 16 by 1 looks like it didn't work, but it did. It actually went and had a big rise for about a week, very quickly, then it collapsed off that rise. You can just about see it on the weekly chart. The next number after that one is 8. Now the 8 by 1 is exactly where the market went and stopped, and just because I had the wrong master time factor, I missed that as a signal. However, you might say, well, it's too late now. No, it's not, because I can still put on the future ones, of course. In fact, I think that's probably drawn from the wrong place now, but hope you get the point. So it actually did go up of an angle. Now it was about halfway up when I realised that it was probably the wrong master time factor, and actually this was quite a bullish sign. So I kind of changed my mind round about here from being, I think it's going lower, than it's probably going higher. But we'll look at that in a second. Now, what's halfway between 32 and 16? It's 24. The 24 by 1, you should be able to see, actually gives you the lows that are made here. What's halfway between 16 and 8? Well, it's 12. And if we put a 12 by 1 on, the 12 by 1 is the same as that 2 by 5 that I was talking about before. They're the same thing, and that's why it's so difficult, as I said before. Okay, so you can see under certain circumstances, certain angles are the same as other ones. So what's halfway between this one, 24, and 16? Well, if you add the two numbers up and divide by 2, you get 20. Can you see the 20 is the same as the 2 by 3 with the different master time factor? And again, I'll say it, that's why it's difficult, but you can see under certain circumstances the angles are in completely different positions, and that's your clue about how to use the right one. Now, what's halfway between 12 and 8? And I think I changed my mind here, and then I put on 10 as a possible place to watch in the future. But and you can see that it's the same as a 1 by 3 with the other master time factor. So then when it didn't work there, that made me go back to these other ones from memory, but I could be wrong. It's a bit hard to remember now. But the point being, you can see how it can be very close. Now I missed this low, even though I predicted it, because it didn't quite touch the angle. As I said in the one of the previous videos, I didn't quite do it, but in fact it did hit the angle, because what's halfway between 10 and 8? Well, halfway between 10 and 8 is 9, and 9 actually was where it got to. And that's how subtle all this can be, and that's why it's difficult. Okay, so it's a bit deep. But what it means is I won't be watching that one for the future, and I won't be watching that one for the future. Or actually, I'll put it another way, I'll have two charts, one with one on and one with the other. So those, I'd have one with and watch them anyway, but the next one below that one would be half of that one. Half of 12 is 6. Okay, so you can kind of predict the future by doing that, but it might come useful in a video for the future, of course. So get rid of that one. So you can see that it can get very, very subtle. Now, because I had the master time factor wrong going up here, I was using the same master time factor coming down, and since the last video that I did on predicting gold, I then went and changed. I had the other master time factor. I've now changed the same master time factor that I have coming up from the low because they tend to be the same. Rarely are they different. Okay, so just a little bit of reason why I actually changed what I was doing. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the first signal I gave after this point here where we were before. As discussed in the training video the 15th of the 1st 2014, adding to my possible buying opportunity in the future, I'm looking for a shorting opportunity depending on how it gets to this angle and this level here. Now if you look very closely at that focus signal, you can see that I've got the previous master time factor angles on, but I've got the ones that I think are working now on this particular chart just to save me doing it again. But I've reproduced the angles on that chart of that focus signal coming down from this high. Now this is what the chart looked like to me at the time, which we're going to look at a little bit closer and show you what actually happened. But first of all, I didn't say I was looking to short it here. But most people will be looking to short it here because there's a very obvious trend line again, and if you watch the previous gold signal video on YouTube, then you'll see that I don't trade trend lines. Now there's a line that goes through this top here, and that's an example of a trend line working, which is unusual, and then we're coming to it again. So for me, that's definitely what I call a mugs play, and so I wouldn't be interested in shorting it. In fact, if it does work, it'll work just long enough to get people in, and then it'll break to the upside. So I'll just zoom in and look at it a little bit closer. So this is a bit closer. So the signal was, I was looking for it to reach this angle and this percentage at the same time. Now let's see what happens. So, and I've just mentioned a bit about the trend line, so it's not a short on the trend line. The market comes down, which is the mugs play, gets people to come in, then it goes up, as it goes back down again, but it's not a trade. You can see if you did a proper trend line, you'd probably get it to hit here if you weren't using an angle, of course. So this was where I was looking to make the trade, but we haven't hit the angle. Now also, this angle's very fitty-inny, and I didn't. It's not a major angle by any stretch of the imagination, and I now know that these aren't the right angles anyway, which I discovered a bit later on. But this is where I'm interested. I was hoping it would go sideways to the angle, and then I could short it. It went down exactly off the percentage that I said it was going to go down off, but that doesn't mean it's a trade. The market then goes back up again, and we get to the level that I'm interested. Obviously I got to the angle, so I'm still interested. The next day it had an inside day, and I was going to short it, in fact, if it broke to the downside out of the inside day. But the next day it went up, which cancelled what I was looking for, but I'm still interested. And then the next day it goes up, and the next day it just goes straight through. So you can say I'm right, but making money isn't about being right. Making money is about how long you're right for, because you need some rules to keep you in trades. Because I keep saying the secret to making money is making big profits when you're right and small losses when you're wrong. You can't make big profits unless you get big movements, and that's why I spend a lot of time trying to find turning points in markets, because if you just make small profits and small losses, the net result will be you'll lose, because you'll end up probably not getting, or if you've got 50% of your trades right, or even 60% of your trades right after costs and only making small profits, you'll never make any money. Anyway, so I was right, but I didn't do it because of what I just showed you. We didn't get to the angle here and the percentage at the same place, and then we didn't get the weakness. Now let's go with the training video of the 18th of the 2nd 2014, and as discussed in there, I'm watching. I decided not to short it here because this 28 by 1 angle is an obvious trend line, even though I think we might have a fall, but I don't think it's going to last. So I'm actually watching for the 24/1 and also the 26/1, depending on how they get there for possible shorts. Now if you look closely at that focus signal, you'll see that I've changed the master time factor angles to the same ones that I have on this chart. And in that focus signal I said that I wasn't interested in shorting the market here. Also, I changed my mind because I've become bullish because of it hitting this angle and realising it unfortunately too late that I had the wrong master time factor. However, I said that this wasn't a short because it was a very obvious trend line. This up here is the major high. If we scroll back a little bit, you can see it. Yeah, it's the major high, and then there's a very obvious trend line coming down. So people will draw that on the charts. They'll be looking for possible shorts here. And as I said, the video was done here. So basically I said don't short it to clients, and this is what happened. The market came down, encouraging people to short the market, and then it goes through to catch them out. The markets can be pretty predictable somewhere. Anyway, what I said for the future was I was watching the -24/1 for a possible shorting opportunity. So let's see what happens. Just cut that line a bit. I tend to make trend lines weak lines, which just means a line to colour, just to kind of remind me why I didn't think it was going to work. So this was the level I was watching for. Now you've got to remember that angles actually travel in time. So if the market goes sideways, it's going to get to the angle at a different time. If it goes up very quickly, it'll get to the angle quicker. So, you know, this is the level I'm watching. So this is what actually happened. The market went up very quickly. It got to the level that was very interested. Now I don't mind it breaking by a bit. Then it went and got to my angle, and I was, you know, this is very interesting. And then the next day, it doesn't look like a lot on this chart, but it actually broke it by quite a bit. But this is basically the angle. It's gone a little bit higher than the level I was looking to short at, but this is where I thought the market was going to go down. And let's see what happens. The market stops and suddenly goes down. Now if you follow our stop loss rules, you'd be out, in fact, today. It's actually up today. There's a rule that Gann had called the 7 to 10 day rule, and you would have moved your stop loss from above this high here to above this high here, and I think last time I looked it was up, so it would hit the stop loss today, and that would be the day to get out. So all my future signals are lower, so that's my focus signals up to date. Again, hopefully you'll agree, pretty amazing.